Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. If you are able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Flores?
Here.
Councilmember Briere?
Here.
Councilmember Lowenstein?
Here.
Councilmember Buffalo?
Here.
Councilmember Graydon? Councilmember Kunzelman?
Here.
Councilmember Teal? Councilmember Higgins? Councilmember Easthope? Councilmember Anglin?
Here.
Mayor Hughes?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Someone please move approval of the agenda. Moved by Councilmember Rapundolo, seconded by Councilmember Lowenstein. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. We're going to move right into our public commentary session tonight. I would note that speakers are not permitted to grant the reserved time to an alternate speaker, that accommodations can be made for anyone wishing to address council while seated, and we would ask that everyone please pay close attention to the time clock before them so that we can be fair to everyone. Our first speaker is Griffith Dick.
Yes, hello. My name is Griffith Dick. I live at 600 Westwood on the west side of Ann Arbor in the 5th Ward. And I've been living there for 33 years or so. I'm talking about the present situation with sidewalk repair and what I think is a situation I'm aiming toward, what I hope would be a useful suggestion towards solving things. There's a lot of unhappiness right now. I've been living there for 33 years, and I think that a good amount of the problem, in fact, a good amount of the solution that you could aim for right now, has to do with what I view as easement trees, easement concrete sidewalk, and I'll come up with a newer term yet, easement mismanagement, to be rough about it for a moment. I've been, over the years, I've asked them, is there anything I can do? I have some background in conservation, forestry, landscaping, and that. Can I knock off these roots while they're littler, et cetera? No, there's nothing I can do, none of my business, et cetera. They were nice. I've never received any bad talk from City Hall people at all. In fact, I think very highly of the people who work here. And, but the one thing is that it's very obvious that I've had no more ability to solve the problem of the concrete going up because of the tree sitting in the easement, because the tree doesn't belong to me and the concrete, well, they may or may not, but the point is I don't have any control. No more than I have the control to go out into the street and repair a pothole on my own. That's not my business. So I've been telling the city, and as usual, they're underfunded and overwhelmed, and thank you for telling us, and this kind of thing. And this is not a complaint at all. In fact, I believe very strongly that Ann Arbor has very good people in that. I think the problem is here that we have two things in Ann Arbor. It's a concern for environment against a concern pitted against people with disabilities, a concern for that. And I think that what we should do is concentrate first on the problems of our own easement trees and I think if we do that well, the rest will be much more manageable. And I think that we should aim for several different things in the thing, and it comes down to this. First, skip the blame placing and that kind of thing. That won't do any good. Second, use people such as disabled veterans and these other people and that. I know several people who use these things. Use them as resources to identify the ones that are the worst. And just aim for doing those things at city expense that are caused by the city, easement, trees, etc. If you aimed at that and did that at city expense, all the rest of this stuff would come along a lot better. I understand there's also some legal urgencies here that have to do with some lawsuits or settlements or stuff like that. I hate to see Center for Independent Living, disabled vets and that effectively pitted against Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor, it just doesn't make sense at all. It should be working together, and I think the city ought to just aim at taking care of those things. I do have a personal interest. I have one tree in that, but et cetera. So anyway.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tom Partridge. Not seeing Mr. Partridge. Our next speaker is Carolyn Hastings.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Hastings. I'm a city resident and I live in the 2nd Ward. I'm also the Executive Director of the Housing Bureau for Seniors. My remarks tonight concern the city's emergency planning process, and I want to congratulate you on what's already been done and urge you to remain vigilant. I've recently returned from a visit to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where I grew up and where my mother still lives. And I was stunned by the flood damage that I saw there. And I hope fervently that a disaster of that magnitude never hits the city of Ann Arbor. No two cities are alike, and Cedar Rapids is laid out very differently from Ann Arbor. The Cedar River runs through the middle of town and the downtown areas along an edge of the river. For historical reasons, the people of Cedar Rapids thought their river would never flood. However, on Friday, June 13th, the river rose 12 feet higher than ever before. 5,400 homes, 1,000 businesses, 84 industries, and over 30 churches, synagogues, and mosques were damaged. 8,000 people were evacuated. Currently, the city plans to demolish 50 structures at the cost of $1.2 million, and many more difficult decisions lie ahead. A quote from a recent post on the Cedar Rapids newspaper website said, "This disaster is difficult to fathom until you drive around and take it all in. Even then, you cannot possibly see every house, business that was destroyed or damaged. The entire city center is still a disaster area. Everywhere you go, houses are empty, gutted with piles of debris in the front yard. It's difficult to imagine how the city will ever recover from this. It would cost a fortune, which no one seems to have, to even begin to put things back the way they once were. And even if we had it, would we really want to rebuild the thousands of houses and businesses in the exact same places they were before? That seems to defy logic." One indication of how unprepared Cedar Rapids was for this event, about 15 years ago, when they outgrew their beautiful, lovely library building, they turned that building into an art museum and built a new library 1 block from the river. This new library was totally flooded, and all books not removed in time were ruined. And if you expect a river to flood, do you build a library in the main library in the floodway? Now, I know Matt Nowd, our emergency manager, has been working diligently on Ann Arbor's plans, and I commend your support of his work. As you move forward, I urge you to keep the 500-year plan in mind. I believe that all current home and business owners in the 500-year floodway should be aware of their status. Everyone should be making informed decisions about home and business sales and purchases, about remodeling plans and insurance coverage. So keep up your good work. No one knows when a disaster will strike. And as the people of Cedar Rapids struggle to make countless difficult decisions about their recovery, please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Susan Morrison.
Good evening, members of council. Susan Morrison, 1124 Brooks. I'm appearing this evening as a member of the law firm of Rentrop and Morrison, PC, on behalf of the Michigan Historic Preservation Network. And I'm here to actually provide a sort of a good news status update to follow up our firm's letter that came to council members and to the Planning Commission dated July 28th, 2008. The Michigan Historic Preservation Network is a statewide nonprofit organization founded in 1981, dedicated to supporting and promoting historic preservation. The network holds the historic preservation easement, which ensures the preservation of 3 significant historic properties at 322 through 334 Washington Street, properties which are on the National Register of Historic Places. Our letter of July 28th to the council expressed our concern about proposed amendments to a planned project at 202 Division called Metro 202 for a 9-story apartment, a building which looms over this nearby cluster of historic buildings and will have a really devastating impact. Our concern is that proposed new amendments will be proposing doubling the density of this apartment project, as well as increasing the size and height Our concern was that this was being handled as an administrative review by planning without the opportunity for input by the public and by city council. And I'm happy to report that at the Planning Commission meeting this past Tuesday, August 5th, as Councilmember Lowenstein can attest to, the Planning Commission, after hearing the concerns, did state that their intent was to have this matter addressed at a meeting in September of the Planning Commission, and they've requested a report from the Planning Department in this regard. So at this point, I just wanted to do a follow-up to our letter to you and say that I look forward to addressing council again when this matter hopefully comes before you for a full review. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now move into a series of public hearings, and I would note that the 3-minute time clock still applies. And we would ask that people please pay close attention to it. If you'd like to speak at one of these public hearings, just step forward. Public hearing 1 is the amendment to Chapter 55, the rezoning of 1.06 acres from Township to R1B Single Family Dwelling District, the Maher property, 3087 Glacier Way. Is there anyone who'd like to address council on this public hearing? See no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing 2, the amendment to Chapter 55, the rezoning of 3.94 acres from Township to R1B and R1C Single Family Dwelling District and R3 Townhouse District to Office District, Maple Cove Office Residential Complex, the northwest corner of Maple in Miller Roads. Is there anyone who'd like to address council on this public hearing? See no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing 3, the resolution to approve Maple Cove Office Residential Complex Site Plan and Development Agreement, 3.94 acres, the northwest corner of Maple and Miller Roads. Is there anyone who'd like to address council on this public hearing? See no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing 4, an ordinance to amend section 2511 of Chapter 28, Sewers and Sewage Disposal Footing Drain Disconnecting Program Reimbursement of Title II of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Is there anyone who'd like to address council on this public hearing? See no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing 5, resolution established in Ann Arbor Industrial Development District 2008-040 for 201 Depot Street. Is there anyone who'd like to address council on this public hearing? See no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing 6, resolution to approve application fee for backyard chickens permit. Is there anyone who'd like to address council on this public hearing? See no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing 7, 6014 Site Plan and Development Agreement, 2.05 acres, the southeast corner of South University and South Forest Avenues. Let me note on this one a couple of things. The items that this would pertain to are not on the agenda tonight, but the public hearing was posted. So we're going to have the public hearing, but we're going to keep it open. We won't close the public hearing, and it will be open until this issue is back on the agenda and comes up again, depending on and I think that's going to be, does anybody have an idea when that'll be? Tentatively the 18th. So we will leave the public hearing open, but I wanted to note that it's all one public hearing. It is not 2 public hearings, it's just one that will be extended. So if you speak at tonight's public hearing, that will be your one speaking time for this public hearing. Just so that's clear to everyone. And public hearing 7, the 6014 Site Plan and Development Agreement, 2.05 acres, the southeast corner of South University and South Forest Avenues. Is there anyone who'd like to address council at this public hearing?
Good evening. My name is Susan Pratt Walton, and I live in the Burns Park area. I'm a city resident. I was pleased to learn that the buildings as high as 7 stories will be allowed on South University. That is a substantial increase and will cause some traffic problems and have other undesirable consequences, but I am hopeful that with intelligent planning, the problems will be manageable. And I think that a moderate increase of housing density in the city is a good thing. But this 20 and 25-story monstrosity is completely out of proportion. Many of the serious problems it would create are obvious. Also, as with most sudden and gigantic changes, there are bound to be additional unintended consequences. This alone argues for gradual incremental increases in density, rather than the sudden explosion this project would involve. Let me add 2 specific observations. 1, as for traffic and parking problems, a large percentage of high-income students will own cars. We can expect most or all of them to be single, so they are less likely than couples or families to share cars. The increase in traffic on adjacent streets, South University, Forest, and Washtenaw, will be absolutely enormous. 2, Burns Park, 3 or 4 blocks south of 601 Forest, is now a wonderful place for all kinds of people to engage in lots of different activities. It is sometimes crowded, even now. But usually kids can find a place to play catch or frisbee with their parents or organize games among themselves. With better than 1,000 students living nearby, we can expect the park to be overrun on nice weekend days. We should be concerned not only about whether little kids can find a place to play, but also the danger posed by galloping adults using large parts of the park for pickup football or soccer or whatever. No doubt the consultants who recommended the 7-story limit had reasons for not making it 8 stories or 10 stories. To go for 20 or 25 is, I should think, utterly unthinkable. Let's encourage a 7-story building on this site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christopher Taylor, and I live at 1505 Brooklyn. I speak today in connection, of course, with the 601 South Forest proposal, which I understand is not on the agenda today, but I will be out of town on the 18th, and so thought to speak today as a member of the public in the hopes that my comments will influence that conversation. I have, of course, spent a good deal of time in the past few months walking the 3rd Ward and talking to residents about the future of Ann Arbor. And it's my belief that the majority of folks with whom I've spoken want an Ann Arbor that balances density and character and that embraces development, but insists that its impact not damage existing neighborhoods. In light of this consensus, I come to you to express grave concerns about the project, concerns that I believe are shared by residents of the 3rd Ward generally and Burns Park specifically. These concerns are not NIMBYism. This population broadly believes that the site warrants development, warrants density, but that the proposal, as it stands, carries with it too many potentially unsound assumptions and unanswered questions. Parking traffic. With respect to its assumed usage, there's parking provided, I believe, for approximately 20% of residents. What is the factual basis for this belief that these amount of residents will own cars? Doesn't it stand to reason that students who can afford luxury apartments will be more likely to own cars than others? Is it also not reasonable to presume that more than 20% of non-student residents will own cars? Does the traffic study or parking plan accommodate this? Wind. The potentially detrimental impact on ground level of wind effects of structures of this size are well known. The developer's wind study, I understand, has just been released, and is my understanding as well that there are methodological gaps which are sufficient to render the study unsuitable. You will receive, of course, analysis about this later, and I urge you to consider it. Brownfield. What is the factual basis for the claim that the marginal environmental benefit associated with a full-scale cleanup, of course, as opposed to the soil removal associated with ordinary construction, what is the basis for the claim that the marginal environmental benefit would exceed the cost to the city associated with the brownfield credits? This case must be ironclad before the council should forsake the potential revenue associated with the project. Now, at the end of the day, I do not have all the facts currently, nor does council presently. So in light of these unsupported assumptions, the open questions, I ask council, as I am sure that it will, to interrogate the assumptions, to push, to prod, and to be cautious. It's my view, based on the facts that I have now, that the risk of this project, the risk of this scope, that it would negatively impact the health safety, and the welfare of the surrounding neighborhoods is great, and indeed too great to permit the project to proceed as planned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Burrow, and I'm a faculty member of the medical school and live in Burns Park. And I do not have something I'm going to read to you, so I'll do my best to ad lib a bit. I'm here on the obvious issue, but first I want to congratulate the members of the council here who have recently won their elections, and say that everybody should understand, winners and losers, that the people are paying attention now. The people of the Third Ward rose up and have prepared a large document which you will all receive and we hope will be studied in a way that's been more thorough than what seems to have been the understanding by planners and city fathers and mothers alike regarding issues of zoning and engineering issues in the planning of this project. It's the neighborhood people that have gotten their own information about subjects such as wind, the adequacy of water mains, parking, safety, and other traffic issues, as well as the basis for the viability of this project, and can show that most of these things have not been presented properly and graded properly by the powers that be that are planning and allowing this project. I would wonder if the city of Ann Arbor wants to go the way of a sister university town where Northwestern is in Evanston. I'm recently from Chicago and have seen the destruction of the local environment there as rapid willy-nilly increases in density have led to tremendous traffic, ugly buildings, and dissatisfaction of the people that live there, much less a lack of support services there, whether it's grocery stores or cleaners. And we certainly don't have the density to support that kind of stuff as people plan for increased density in downtown or in the South University area. So when this report comes, the people would be appreciative if it's studied in great detail, because rather than spending lots of time on chickens on this day where the ordinance has gone into effect, we should be looking at our own lifestyle here, or elections can be won and lost in the future for all of you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellen Ramsberg, 1503 Cambridge Road. I'm glad that the public hearing has been continued for this project, for the 1601 Forest project, and I wanted to speak to that particular, to the process tonight, not the project itself. The community at large, neighborhood associations, and many private citizens have demonstrated great concern about the potential negative effects of this project. And while most have chosen not to speak tonight because the final data and the final promises that the developer will make to the city have not been finalized, I want to remind council that the community expects to be allowed to weigh in on the development agreement to ensure that if council approves this project, that the agreement adequately addresses the public safety and welfare concerns, and to ensure that the agreement is enforceable, something that is not always the case. Scheduling and rescheduling this important decision, especially in mid-August, is difficult for the general public. I hope the motion to continue the hearing will contain language that requires that the scheduling of the public hearing be tied to receipt of the missing data and the finalized development agreement, being ready for public review at least 5 days before the hearing, and that adequate notice is given to the neighborhood associations and the public when those documents are ready to be reviewed and when the real public hearing will be held. And I hope that because I'm speaking to the process, that you will let me speak again when the hearing is continued. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Peter Nagurney, 914 Lincoln. I'm co-chair of the North Burns Park Association. I'd like my full 5 minutes. Our association supports South University.
3 minutes, I'm sorry. At Planning Commission, it would be 5, but at Council, it's only 3.
Okay, thank you. I want to focus on an issue that has not been addressed significantly, but one that risks unanticipated consequences for this project, for the neighborhood, and for the city. The developers presented this building in literature and public statements as a student dormitory and has invested a great deal of thought into making the design and amenities appeal to a certain class of university students, the top 10%. And planning department, in reviewing the developer's plans, followed the developer's lead and based estimates for occupancy, infrastructure, and usage upon that assertion. After many meetings and much research, I believe this is improper labeling. 601 Forest is not a student dormitory. It's a private, for-profit apartment building similar to those being built at other large universities around the country. And even though the developers say they intend the building to function as a student dorm and tout the special features that will make it attractive to students, we must acknowledge that each apartment in the building will essentially be an upscale rooming house. 4 separate unrelated individuals sharing baths, group living and kitchen spaces, locking bedrooms, each occupant with its own contract with the developer. It's not a student dormitory. It's a 1,142 room bed rooming house. As far as council is concerned, you're being asked to approve the site plan for a residential apartment building. There's no student dorm or rooming house code for the city. And because this is a private development and not a university building, there are implications for what council considers. Residents are not required to be students because of federal housing laws. Non-students can live here, families can live here, anyone who pays the rent can live here. Because of the landlord-tenant laws in Ann Arbor, the developer's assertion that anyone who disobeys the laws can be thrown out doesn't deal with the reality of these laws and the due process and time required to evict a tenant. There are other implications as well. Because it's not a student dorm, we expect the city to reevaluate and revise any projections and assumptions based on the rules for residential apartment building. The maximum occupancy of a rental unit is up to 6 unrelated adults, which means that the potential occupancy of this building is not 1,142, but closer to 2,000. And that means that all the calculations that have been done for the impact of traffic, parking, congestion, noise, fires, water, sewage, waste must be readjusted to factor in this potential larger future occupancies. All the student-friendly amenities may never make it into the final building, and the building may change with new owners, with occupants. Therefore, council must consider this project, and not just for now and for the future.
Thank you.
I hope you'll consider this when you review the plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Karen Keating, and I'm a resident and board member at one of Mr. Hughes's developments located in Woodhaven, Michigan. I come here today to inform you of my personal experience to date. As background, approximately in the year 2000, Ronald L. Hughes, developer, and Patrick O'Leary of Hometown Building formed a limited liability corporation, not unlike the 601 Forest LLC, to develop a condominium project in Woodhaven to be named Park Lane Townhomes. In June of 2007, the builder dissolved Hometown Building, and Ronald Hughes, the developer, formed a new LLC by the name of Hall West Limited Partnership, taking over complete control of the Park Lane Townhome development. As of October of last year, the Condo Association had their transition meeting where the residents for the first time gained control over the board. The new board was elected at the meeting, and by December, the financial books were turned over to the board. Upon analysis of the financials, the board began asking questions of the management company regarding the finances. It should be noted that the management company at that time was not hired by the association, but had been put in place by the developers LLC. Also back in December, the board began to worry about the numerous roof leaks that the condos were experiencing, including the collapse of one of the residents' bedroom ceilings. 2 separate roof contractors told the association that the roofs were faulty, and then the insurance company denied the insurance claim due to their determination also that the roofs were faulty and were installed incorrectly. The board gave Mr. Hughes the opportunity to step up and remedy the situation, but he did not respond. The association had to foot the bill. At the advice of the attorney, the board decided to hire an outside independent roof analysis to assess the condition of the roofs. The roof analysis was completed this past February, and it was determined that all roofs were installed incorrectly, and due to the nature of the faulty installation, all 12 roofs needed to be totally replaced at a cost of approximately $600,000 to $720,000. In late March of this year, the board hired a new management company and asked the attorney to do an in-depth analysis of the financial books. At that time, the attorney discovered that the developer, Ronald Hughes, had not been paying his obligated monthly assessments and was in arrears of approximately $50,000. The board contemplated suing Mr. Hughes' LLC for the monthly assessments owed and a plan to fix the roofs. Mr. Hughes and his attorney requested a meeting with the board back in May of this year, and on June 11th, the board met with Mr. Hughes and his attorney, at which time Mr. Hughes indicated he had no intention of paying the association the $50,000 in back monthly assessments, and that he would not be paying to get the roofs fixed. In addition, he threatened that if the association decided to sue for the monies owed and the roof replacements, he would simply dissolve Hall West Limited Partnership, and the association would get nothing. What he did offer was to begin paying the monthly assessments going forward that we were already legally entitled to. The board decided to go ahead and file a lawsuit, and as of today, Mr. Hughes has not yet been served because he has been out of touch for 6 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, but in order just to keep the decorum of the meeting, we don't have applause during public hearings.
Mr. Mayor and council persons, my name is Stuart Nelson, 2975 Hickory Lane. I've recently spent a lot of time walking around Ward 2, as some of you know, probably more than anybody in the city, and I felt maybe it was appropriate for me to weigh in with some of the responses that I heard from some of our residents in Ward 2, some of which are sitting right here. I think to a person, nobody has really said that we don't want a building on that parcel. People's concern seems to be that the height of the building is totally out of scale with the neighborhood, and that is their major concern. They also feel that the citizens haven't had adequate input into the process to reach a consensus as to how high we want these buildings to go in various areas of the city. The other issue that came up, and I discussed with several residents at greater length, was the notion of using brownfield money to pay for part of the building. I think if the developer wants to build a building there, that's fine. That certainly is prerogative. But it's my opinion, and it's also the opinion of several people that I spoke with in our ward, that he should do so with his own money. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address council on this public hearing tonight? I would just ask that the next speaker please stand by the pillar so we can just keep things moving.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Dave DeVardi. I live at 1231 Baldwin. I'm a member of the DDA, the Downtown Development Authority, a former member of City Council. I favor increased density in the city core area, and I've advocated for it and worked for it as a member of the DDA for a number of years. This project, however, is totally out of scale with the kind of community I believe we, the community members, want to maintain. 25 stories is way out of scale for this community. I believe that if the recent rezoning of Southview allows this development by right, then that rezoning was a mistake. I would favor placing this area in a transitional zone as contemplated by the A2, D2 process now underway that would create a transitional zone. And that's something I think is warranted in this area. It would allow for higher density, but not something so out of scale that it dwarfs the nearby neighborhood. I ask you as council members to be stewards of the community and stewards of the taxpayers' money. If this can happen by right, I would ask you to deny even a penny of any kind of public subsidy, be it brownfields, DDA grants, any other kind of grants. They'll come forward and say, look, we're doing these good things. We deserve some subsidy for it. I would answer the whole building is out of sync with the community. It deserves zero subsidy. That's taxpayer money. Don't make us pay for the destruction of our own community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kim Winnick. I live at 1045 Olivia Avenue. I've lived in the North Burn Park area for nearly a quarter of a century. There's been a lot of discussion tonight regarding technical issues, wind, traffic, but I think they skirt really the central issue here is that this building, a building of this size, does really not belong in this location in town. I think it will destroy the aesthetics of the area. It will change the character of Ann Arbor. And after all, issues such as livability, aesthetics, character are what attracted many of us to this city. And we don't want to be like a Silver Spring, Maryland, or Troy, Michigan. There's nothing wrong with those places, but it's not what our community is. Also, I note that many of the tall buildings that have been built here in town are unattractive. I mean, University Towers, right off of South University, is a very unattractive building. And given that it has provided a large number of dwelling units, why hasn't it increased the vibrancy of Southview? I mean, you would think a building of that size, I mean, that's the arguments we're hearing now, will revitalize the area. And University Towers has not done that. Also, a number of the buildings, like on the Olga site, where the restaurant used to be, architectural details that were sort of promised were not delivered, and the building lacks in a number of important respects. I am very concerned that certain financial considerations have driven a number of these decisions. I know that the city is always looking to increase its tax revenues, and I know as a taxpayer we would prefer not to pay as individuals as much tax or property tax as we do, but simply to build these large density buildings in the hope of increasing the revenues to the city at the expense of the nice city that we have, in my view, is an absolutely wrong decision. Also, I'm not a lawyer. I haven't followed all the zoning issues, but I'm almost incredulous that zoning was changed to permit such a large building in this area. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kate Mendeloff, and I live at 1411 Wells, right opposite Burns Park, and very close to student housing, rental housing. And I have had a very difficult time in that community with the kind of irresponsible tenant ship of the students who live in these houses. I have issues with the renters, the landlords on the upkeep of these residences. There are broken bottles in our streets. I've had my bicycle tires punctured by them. There are small children who are riding bicycles and running in this area. And there is constant garbage in front of the houses. The beer pong tables yield 50 or 60 plastic cups that don't get picked up. So I'm concerned because I do live in a student ghetto, or right next to a student ghetto on that side of Burns Park. And I am very concerned in terms I think the university needs to provide housing for the students. I think this is a great fault in this community, that the university does not take responsibility in providing enough dormitory space. And I would agree that I don't think that this apartment counts as a dormitory. And the advantage of a dormitory is there is an infrastructure for the students in terms of their living and handling their particular needs, which I don't believe this building would have. I also feel, as a resident of the neighborhood, that it is a population of a lot of young families and young children. I brought my children up in this neighborhood, and there have been a number of unpleasant incidents with drunken undergraduates coming to my porch in the middle of the night and vomiting on my porch, and getting aggressive in the playground area. And I just feel with that kind of large number of young people who feel very entitled to the neighborhood, that I'm just concerned about the quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others who'd like to address council on this public hearing tonight? I would just note that, as we said earlier, the public hearing will remain open, and we will take it up at another meeting. Thank you all for coming. Are there communications from council? Councilmember Higgins.
I would just like to thank everyone who expressed their condolences on the passing of my father. I really appreciated it. It meant a great deal to me and my family.
Thank you. Are there other communications from council? Someone please move approval of the council minutes of the regular session of July 21, 2008. Moved by Councilmember Briere, seconded by Councilmember Anglin. Discussion on the council minutes. Any corrections? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Someone please move the consent agenda. And there's only one item. I'll just read it. The resolution to approve a contract with Avalon Housing for the management of Washtenaw Affordable Housing Corporation's properties and operations. $35,000 in Ann Arbor Affordable Housing Trust Fund dollars. Moved by Councilmember Rapundelow, seconded by Councilmember Briere. Discussion on the consent agenda. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's approved. B1, amendment to Chapter 55, the rezoning of 1.06 acres from Township to R1B Single Family Dwelling District, the Maher property, 3087 Glacier Way. Moved by Councilmember Rapundelow, seconded by Councilmember Lowenstein. Discussion on B1. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's approved. B2, amendment to Chapter 55, the rezoning of 3.94 acres from Township to R1B and R1C Single Family Dwelling District and R3 Townhouse District to Office District, the Maple Cove Office Residential Complex at the northwest corner of Maple and Miller Roads. Moved by Councilmember Lowenstein, seconded by Councilmember Graydon. Discussion on B2. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's approved. B3, an ordinance to amend Section 2511 of Chapter 28, Sewers and Sewage Disposal Footing Drain Disconnecting Program Reimbursement of Title II of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Higgins, seconded by Councilmember Lowenstein. Discussion on B3. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's approved. DS7, resolution to authorize summary publication of ordinance number 0828 to amend section 2511 of chapter 28 of title II of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Discussion on DS7.
Didn't we move it?
Oh, very good. Thank you. Moved by Councilmember Briere, seconded by Councilmember Higgins. Now we'll have discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's approved. C1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55 and Chapter 57 and subdivision and land use control of Title V of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor regarding citizen participation. Moved by Councilmember Briere, seconded by Councilmember Rapundelow. Discussion of C1. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's approved. DC1, resolution to reappoint members to the City Environmental Commission. Moved by Councilmember Briere, second by Councilmember Rapundelow. Discussion on DC1. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's approved. I'd like to take just a short break right here. We are back to consider DC2, the resolution to order election and determine ballot question for charter amendment requiring voter approval of the sale of land purchased, acquired, or used for park purposes. Moved by Councilmember Briere, seconded by Councilmember Lowenstein. Discussion on DC2. Councilmember Briere.
I'd like to move to our next meeting.
Postpone to our next meeting?
Next meeting.
All
Sorry,
right.
being a little sleepy over here.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Lowenstein. Discussion on the postponement of DC2. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. It's postponed to our next meeting. DC3, resolution to amend Resolution R08297 and restating approval of issuance of a downtown development district liquor license to HBSP Holdings Corp., ABA Salsaritas Fresh Cantina at 401 East Liberty, Suite Number 2 in the city of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Rapundelow, seconded by Councilmember Anglin. Sorry. Discussion on DC3. Councilmember Rapundelow.
Just a quick explanation on this because most of you probably recall we dealt with this at our last meeting. It turns out that this application or this recommendation from our liquor committee to the state, along with many, many others from around elsewhere in the state, were rejected at the state level because of some issues with language. And so it is back before us. The city attorney's office, Mary Fales in particular, has adjusted the language to meet the wishes of the State Liquor Commission. And so it's back before us tonight to approve that revised language, if you will.
Thank you for alerting us to that. What I heard about it was that not only were the cities not ready for this, the State Liquor Commission wasn't ready for it either. Further discussion of DC3. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's approved. DB1, the resolution to approve Maple Cove Office Residential Complex Site Plan and Development Agreement, 3.94 acres, the northwest corner of Maple and Meller Roads. Moved by Councilmember Lowenstein, seconded by Councilmember Anglin. Discussion on DB1. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. DB2, resolution to approve a participation agreement with Washtenaw County Parks and Recreation Commission for the purchase of 6 parcels located in Scioto Township owned by Randall C. and Donna F. Reith, Carol Dudley, Isabel A. Herrera, and Open Roads Developers, LLC, and to approve a match share of $350,000. Moved by Councilmember Lowenstein, seconded by Councilmember Briere. Discussion of DB2. I would just say that it's very nice to see the collaboration going on and the partnerships being formed for this purchase and others that are moving forward. Further discussion on DB2?
You are going to specify this as Greenway. Not Greenway, Green
Belt.
Land.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Moving forward with the green belt. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show it was unanimous with 9 council members present and thus satisfies the 8-vote requirement. DS1, resolution establishing the Ann Arbor Industrial Development District 2008-040 for 201 Depot Street. Moved by Councilmember Rapundelow, seconded by Councilmember Higgins. Discussion on DS1. Councilmember Briere.
Is Mr. Crawford here? Mr. Crawford, I sent you some questions yesterday, and I do thank you for responding with answers. My biggest question, as you know, was why we would be granting this kind of speculative tax increment financing And you granted that answer today by telling me that it was speculative. Can you give me any further information? I'm really confused by this. It seems to be helping just somebody rent their building.
Okay, yeah, let me clarify, because the questions that were raised, there were a couple. One was, there was an article in the paper about the city considering a speculative abatement. That term speculative is in the state language, and there are special qualifications that you must meet in order to get that. And originally, the petitioner had asked for that abatement. That request was withdrawn. So what you actually have before you is a request for creating a district that would include a building that is presently empty, and that would allow a tenant to come in and request an abatement on their personal property or any improvements they made to the property. So what you're specifically looking for or voting on today is allowing an incentive for a tenant not yet identified to come in and, jobs and tax base with the personal properties. It's very similar to what you've done before, except previously you knew who the tenant was. In this case, we don't. So it's incentivizing someone to come in.
Councilmember Rapundelow.
Well, before I have some questions that I think I'd like further information on, and so I will be moving to postpone this. But just relative to what you just said, though, a potential tenant, however, would still have to initiate an application for receiving a tax abatement. So what we're voting on tonight is simply to create a district that would, in effect, position this applicant and this building to essentially market itself to potential tenants who could then come in and would it be required to apply. So there's no incentive being given tonight if we were to vote for this.
Well, right, there's no incentive with this vote. This is a cue to the marketplace that if an entity that's coming in qualifies for a tax abatement, then the council would be receptive to evaluating their application. That's what this basically, the cue it gives. And in this case, the tax abatement falls basically, to qualify, you have to be a research institution, a high-tech company, or an industrial company. If some other firm not in that field were to try to lease the space, they would not qualify to even apply.
Right. So all this is really is the first step of the normal procedure, which is first identifying the district, and then the next steps would be the applicable application for a tax abatement and so forth. So there's no incentive essentially being given if we were to vote for this. But be that as it may, I would like to move for postponement to our first meeting in September. This is the first request of its kind for Ann Arbor, and I'd like to get some further information as to similar things that have been done in other communities here in Southeast Michigan and so forth, just to satisfy myself as to exactly what we're trying to do here, and make sure that it's done appropriately, since it is sort of the first one, and then we'll set the set the stage for others like that, I'm sure, down the road. So.
You've moved to postpone, seconded by Councilmember Graydon. Councilmember Suarez?
Does that mean there's no more questions?
If you can artfully speak to the postponement.
Well, I guess they can be caucus questions or something later on.
Or when the next time this comes up.
Yeah.
Councilmember Graydon.
I'll support the postponement, and the explanation you gave was very helpful. I think one of the things I'd like during this period of time, how long is it? First meeting in September. Again, Councilmember Rapundelow, I think, raised this about just seeing examples in other communities where they've done this. And I think it would also be helpful to have, in that 4-week interim now, a little bit more detail from either staff or from the petitioner about why we think it is good to establish a district here. We've talked about, you and I have talked about how there may be economically depressed areas of a particular community where you say we want economic development in this area. That's why we're creating a district. I don't know if that applies here. If it does, I'd like to see a little bit of information about that. If it's not that reason, if that's not the reason we should create this district, then what is the basis for establishing the district beyond that? Because I think I've been supportive of economic development, job creation, and it's critical that we do that in this area. But I think that's the kind of information we need in the coming weeks to evaluate this, because we can't just say we're going to give an abatement to a building just because it's empty. There's got to, I think, be the bigger policy reason. So that's kind of information I'd appreciate during this postponement.
Further discussion on the postponement. Councilmember Rapunalo.
Well, again, I just want to make sure that we're all understanding the same thing, because Councilmember Graydon just, I think, misstated it again. We are not giving an abatement. By approving this district, we would not be giving an abatement. It would simply be declaring the zone, the district, what have you, and then whoever was eligible under the conditions that you've alluded to would have to begin a procedure, as they typically do, and from then we can decide whether or not an abatement would be appropriate. So again, we would not be giving an abatement just because we declared district.
Councilmember Gray.
And thank you for correcting me to the extent I misspoke, and I clearly did. So my question then during the postponement is, what is the basis for creating this district? Again, if we want to promote economic development in this district because it's a depressed district, okay. But I'd like to hear that explanation in some detail.
Councilmember Suarez.
Yep, since Councilman Graydon has raised this question, the kind of details that I'd be interested in is how many such industrial development districts we might be looking at, and what are the criteria for deciding on one versus another? Is price one of those? And do we have any evidence that certain criteria like price, like is one price bracket going to promote more the development that we think will help Ann Arbor versus another? Or if it's not price, the other criteria that we're using, what evidence do we have for those criteria? So I'd like to see that kind of information. Thank you.
Further discussion. Councilmember Higgins.
The question I have is, I believe we also held a public hearing tonight on this. With this being postponed and additional questions being asked, do we also want to continue the public hearing?
I suppose someone could propose that, but I
I'm
think,
just asking for help.
yeah, and I was just, I'm not sure about the rules about that, but I would also note that this isn't an abatement we're giving out. We're just establishing a district, and it would be possible for anyone who would try to get an abatement would then need to go through another public hearing process, is my guess. Mr. Frazier, do you have something to add?
Yeah, the process as it currently stands, if somebody comes to us, and you recall that we've had several of these in the last year, it takes anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks from the time that they first apply before you get through your process, because there's 2 sets of hearings, 1 to create the district, and then 2 to even consider the application after you've created the district. The real benefit in this case is time. If in fact you're willing to say that we would entertain these at this location, you've established the district, which cuts about a month worth of process out of the deliberation. And if you're negotiating a lease and you want to tie up a deal when there's a lot of competition in the marketplace, that time advantage is probably the incentive that you're giving the owner of the property in this particular instance, and it has been vacant for a while. That's, from my perspective, the really prime consideration in this particular instance. Do we want to help them get this property rented up with the kinds of stuff that are qualified under our abatement program? And that's perfectly worth your exploring, and you ought to take some time to do that.
Councilmember Higgins.
Mr. Frazier's right. We have created these districts all over the city at different times to allow people to have the opportunity to apply for abatements. And there are times that no abatements are given, and then we have rescinded the districts in a couple of cases. So these are not left just sitting there. They're done very specifically, and then when nothing happens or something falls through, we clean them up and those districts are taken away. So that's just kind of new process for new members to help them understand.
Further discussion on DS1. postponement, I'm sorry. All in favor of the postponement?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. DS2, resolution to allocate $845,000 in home funds to Avalon's Pear Street Apartments, LDHA LP, for the acquisition and rehabilitation of 1440 Pear Street and to approve the housing affordability agreement. Moved by Councilmember Briere, seconded by Councilmember Lowenstein. Discussion of DS2. Councilman Rangley.
We have a representative.
We do. Have a staff member here.
Hi there. Hi there. Could you just take a minute to explain to the public what the project is?
Sure. This is a 20-unit affordable apartment complex. It is going to be owned and operated by Avalon Housing, adding to their 210 units of affordable housing. This complex on Pear Street will be for folks who are very low income, including 6 units set aside for folks who have been chronically homeless and are suffering from some sort of disability. So it will follow the Avalon's model of enhanced property management, where folks who have had some difficulty maintaining housing in the past can receive needed support services to maintain their housing. So this is a 20-unit complex. The total budget for the development is about $2.7 million, and obviously about $1.9 million have been secured from other resources, state and private.
You still have the floor, Councilman Rangley.
I want to congratulate Avalon Housing for its efforts in the city and the work that they're doing, and I think the town, of course, is very proud of it as an organization. A lot of respect for this organization. I know we have several in my community and where I live, and I've watched them being taken care of, and I know the people who live there, and people are there long-term, which I think is the most important thing for someone who has problems, that they know they have a house. They're going to remain in it for a very long time, like we all do. We would hate to be in a situation in our lives where we're uprooted continually and we don't know where we're going to live next month. So I think this really is a great thing that the whole city should be proud of. And taxpayers should be really well served by this. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I did just want to point out that Michael Apple is here. He's the director of Avalon Housing, and I'm sure he'd be thrilled to come up and answer any questions or talk about the project.
We might need his help. I have a couple of questions. We are, with our home funds, putting it $840,000 or $845,000, and you indicated that the total package was how much?
$2.7 million.
And who are the other partners? Just for the public.
The Michigan State Housing Development Authority, which is our state housing authority, has contributed $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
The Federal Home Loan Bank has contributed $200,000. And then Avalon has secured low-income housing tax credits in the amount of $886,000. Let's see here. And then, a loan from the Great Lakes Cap Fund in the amount of $282,000. So they've leveraged a lot of other non-local resources to bring them into our community.
One of the goals that we've had sometime going quite a few years back when we settled on a project to replace the 100 units of very low-income housing that were certainly not nearly as nice as this, that was that we would replace all those units. And I'm happy to see that this model is coming forward, has a methodology that can be used to do this. And these 20 fit into that very low-income category. And would some of these units be, some of the people in these units be examples of where the supportive housing money that we just put into our budget, the $250,000 for this year, would that possibly be applied in this, for people living in these units?
Well, I can tell you that the folks certainly, and Michael, you can come up and answer it if you want, but the folks in certainly the 6 units that are set aside really specifically for chronically homeless individuals. That is the kind of resident who was in the Y units. So there is a direct, I guess, transmission from sort of what we're aiming for there with those 6 units. In terms of the support services, I don't know that that has been fully decided. I think it is the type of service, certainly, and the type of population. I can't comment, I'm not really sure, and I don't know if it's been decided fully, but.
First of all, thank you for the kind words said about Avalon earlier. The process for deciding the specific allocation for the support service dollars is underway and hasn't been done yet, either by the Alliance or the integrated funding group that's been established. But as Mary Jo said, this is the kind of project that those services would be going for.
Yeah, and I'm just interested in seeing that happen, and I know the process is ongoing and been part of that process. But that final decision on where that particular segment of the funds would be allocated would come back to us. And so I know I would look favorably on that. And I really appreciate that we're able to partner in this and moving forward and getting these 20 units. Thank you. Councilmember Graydon.
Mayor raises an excellent point about this being a great first step toward the replacement of the 100 units that were lost at the Y. Councilmember Breer asked an important question about the process for this, and I just want to briefly let the public know about that. It used to be that the housing, it was back then the Housing Policy Board and now the Housing Human Services Advisory Board, would review applications for home funds basically on a first come, first serve ad hoc basis. And it could be that all of the money was spent quickly in 1 year, within the first month of the year without any knowledge of what else was coming down the pipeline, or that none of the money was spent. And there was a recognition about 2 years ago that we needed to have a more cohesive system. So the board recommended issuance of an RFP for home funds. The council approved it. The RFP was issued. There was an in-depth public process involving the public use of our citizen committee. The proposals were ranked and scored by the committee and the staff, and recommendations were made. And I believe I saw in the caucus question, this was one of those projects. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So this is part of that ongoing process. So this was part of a very well-planned, organized process that extensively involved the public, and we're seeing the fruits of that. And I believe your note also mentioned that the next RFP for home funds will be going out soon, probably this fall. Mm-hmm. And so that process will continue. So I think that was a very important question for Councilmember Breer to ask, because I realized as I looked at that, I thought, we started that process back when I was still on that board, and that's been over a year. So I could easily see how some folks might not know all those details.
It's a very good step. Any further questions from council? Thank you. Further discussion on DS2. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It was unanimous. It passes. DS3, resolution to award a contract for the water treatment plant. HVAC improvements to project to Great Lakes Mechanical, $598,000. Moved by Councilmember Lowenstein, seconded by Councilmember Briere. Discussion on DS3. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. DS4, resolution to approve an amendment to the professional services agreement with CDM Michigan, Inc. for the Swift Run Parallel Relief Sewer Project, $114,146. Moved by Councilmember Lowenstein, seconded by Councilmember Rapundelow. Discussion on DS4. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's approved. DS5, resolution to extend provisions of the Ann Arbor City Code and city rules and regulations that pertain to site development, construction, and management of the airport buildings, landing fields, and other aeronautical facilities at the Ann Arbor City Airport, and to authorize city staff to exercise their authority under those provisions over said aeronautical facilities. Moved by Councilmember Higgins, seconded by Councilmember Rapundelow. Discussion on DS5. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's a, I'm sorry, Councilmember Higgins. Let's just call that off and go back in time a moment or two.
I just have a
Would you pull your microphone down, please?
I just have a clarification for the city administrator. When I was reading this, we talk about, it's a policy statement between the city and Pittsfield Township to review plans, and that they had the question on whether or not they should be reviewing and approving aspects of the plan, is what I understand. Our understanding is that they do not review and approve, but we do them the courtesy of submitting them the plans, and they can provide comments to us, correct?
And in addition, we pay them for their time to review it, but we do not apply specifically for permits.
If they have issues with whatever we're doing, how do we resolve that? That was one piece of the process I didn't know.
Same as we would with the regular review process. We sit down and we determine what's the appropriate engineering or legal requirements associated with that, and we try to work out an agreement. But we retain the right in this circumstance to do what we believe is correct under the circumstances.
And I know that what we're doing right now with the box hangers are all under the aeronautical law. and
That's
it's all
correct.
done that way. Thank you very much for that
You're welcome.
clarification.
Further discussion on DS5? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. DS6, resolution to approve application fee for backyard chickens permit, moved by Councilmember Kunzelman, seconded by Councilmember Lowenstein. Discussion on DS6. Councilmember Kunzelman?
Well, I ask all of council's approval on this resolution. I think the fees are quite comparable to what other communities have installed, particularly in Madison, Wisconsin, and Missoula, Montana. I've also sent around, for your viewing pleasure, Ann Arbor's first chicken coop that has already been constructed and will be obviously ready to go once the permit fee is awarded tonight. And they'll be quite excited, I think, if you look at this chicken coop. It's an old playhouse that's been converted into a chicken coop on the Old West Side. And this is exactly what this effort has been about, is to bring joy to families in this community that really want to move forward with sustainable living. So, again, I urge your passage of this resolution, and hopefully these people and many others will be coming forth to the clerk's office to get their permits.
Further discussion on DS6? This may be the last we hear about chickens for a while, and I'm going to miss them because they certainly have provided us with a lot of laughs. I'm still curious about what's going to happen to the old chickens. Will we have an old chicken retirement home when they stop laying eggs? Will we need a chicken park because we have a dog park? And all of those questions are still rolling around in my head. But I have had a couple of conversations now with the mayor of Madison, Wisconsin, where he reports to me that they have had nary a problem with this, with the ordinance that they've had in place. And he reports that they've had it for a few years and they are now starting to see a decrease in the number of people with chickens, because some people who originally had chickens have found out that it wasn't as much fun as they thought it was going to be. But otherwise, I'm happy to vote for this and see how this experiment moves forward. Councilmember Higgins.
I have one question, and I believe it's going to be for either the city administrator or our clerk. Our fee is $20 for a 5-year permit, and yet other cities charge an annual fee. Is there a reason why we chose to go on a 5-year? I know the ordinance says 5 years, but is $20, really reasonable? And what do you do if someone has an issue? How is that resolved?
What we did was, simply what we did was take a look at whether or not we were going to have an annual permit or a 5-year permit. We assumed that there was no reason to have an annual permit if there was nothing likely to change during that period of time, and we didn't want the property owner to keep having coming back. Beyond that, Jackie sat down with her folks and determined how much time it was going to take to process it and set the fee accordingly.
And I would just add one other thing, that if anyone is still listening on this August night, that we did discuss chickens for some time, and we have had some fun with it, but it didn't take even a minute away from considering other serious issues that are before the city. We, as you know, stay here until our work is done. So having talked about chickens, it certainly did not detract from any of our other thinking or voting or action on any other item.
It may have loosened you up for some better thinking.
Yes, it may indeed. It's good to have a laugh once in a while. Further discussion on DS6. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. DS8, resolution to award a construction contract to CI Contracting, Inc., bid number 3957, $574,383 for the Swift Run Parallel Relief Sewer Project. Moved by Councilmember Apundolo, seconded by Councilmember Briere. Discussion on DS8. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's approved. I do have some communications. I'd like to request confirmation of the following nominations that were placed on the table for your consideration at the July 21, 2008 meeting: the reappointment of Roger Hewitt to the Downtown Development Authority, and the appointment of Roger Curson to the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board to fill a vacancy. Would someone please move those appointments? Moved by Councilmember Higgins, seconded by Councilmember Lowenstein. Discussion on those appointments. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. And I have one more name to add. Didn't quite make it in time for the sheet, but we'll get you the paperwork. It's a reappointment. But I would like to recommend the following nominations for your consideration: to the Sign Board of Appeals, Eleanor A. Addington, and I'm sure I didn't say that right, filling a vacancy, and Sandy Smith as a reappointment for the DDA, because she still has some time to go as a citizen. And that will be coming back before you at our next meeting. Those are my communications for tonight. Are there further communications from council? Councilmember Lowenstein.
I would just note that on the F section of our agenda, which most people don't usually look at from the public, there's a note that we are providing to the Ann Arbor District Library council minutes from 1831, I think, until 1930, that are going to be digitized. And so these very old council minutes are going to be searchable and available for people who want to, or sorry, it's 1891. Don't go back that far again. But it's really a nice project that the library is doing for us and will benefit the citizens.
And a lot of those are handwritten in ledger books going way back over the years. It's actually very interesting reading for some people. Are there further communications from council? Councilmember Apundolo.
I just wanted to extend my thanks to the city clerk and her staff and those who staff the polling places for all their hard work and a nice job again. You know, I think a lot of people don't appreciate how much work has to go into those and the sleepless hours that staff puts in before and after to make sure that the job is done properly on behalf of our citizens.
Councilmember Graydon.
Not only do I echo that comment, and I think it's an important one because it is a very big deal to have a good, smooth election. When I was first elected, we did not have a smooth election.
Look what happened.
You were waiting for that one.
That was a big setup. I couldn't help.
He didn't even know that was coming. That's quick. That's quick. Roger Frazier, he's here all week, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to tip your waitress. But the so that is a big deal because we do have a lot of communities have problems with their elections, and we have not had one since Jackie Boudry has been our clerk, and they've gone very smoothly. But I also think thanks are in order to the wonderful people who actually go out there and staff the polls and show up at 6:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and stay until 8, 9, 10, 11 at night. And I guess I'll also make this as an advertisement. If you're watching, you're going to need a lot of them in November, I'm guessing. And I know that Howard keeps a good list of people, and hopefully he'll be able to fill all those spots. But if folks would like to serve, it is paid. It's not voluntary. You get some money for it. But we're going to need a lot of bodies because it is going to be a jam-packed election, and call 994-2725. City Clerk, if you would like to serve as a poll worker in November.
Are there other communications from council? Mr. Suarez.
I just wanted to also say thank you to Jackie and to, especially in my precinct, there were 3 people who sat there all day long, and I voted at the end of the day, and I was the 29th person. So 3 people sat there all day long so that 29 people could vote. So I wanted to thank them for that.
Are there further? Councilmember Higgins.
Well, regarding that, I am amazed at the poll workers who sit there, and I know out at Pioneer, I have never gone into such a hot room. It was just sweltering out there, and these people were cheerful and helpful the whole time. Congratulations.
Other communications from council? Are there communications from the city administrator?
No, sir.
Communications from the city attorney?
No, sir.
And we thank Kevin McDonald for sitting in with us tonight. It's nice to have you with us. Someone please move the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals. Moved by Councilmember Graydon, second by Councilmember Higgins. Discussion on the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals, corrections, comments. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Is there anyone who'd like to address council under public comment general time? You have 3 minutes, and you need not have signed up in advance.
Hi, I'm John Floyd. I live at 519 Sunset Road with my sons Jack and Calvin. Congratulations to those who won their primaries. Wednesday's Ann Arbor News quotes Your Honor as saying, "We've elected 5 council members with a big picture vision of the future of Ann Arbor. They have the ability to work together to see it through." However, I can't recall any of the winning candidates actually running on any articulated big picture vision of the future of Ann Arbor. Mr. Mayor, now that most of your team are safely elected or re-elected, would you share your big picture vision of the future of Ann Arbor with the rest of us? This is especially important in light of changes in council's plan for zoning downtown unveiled at the Planning Commission meeting held here on election night. In particular, it would be helpful to hear how the elimination of transitional zoning for most of the residential edges of downtown, placing highest density zoning up against the Burns Park neighborhood and the Old Fourth Ward Historic District, fits in your vision. I believe that Ann Arbor can be the engine of reinventing Southeast Michigan's economy. I believe that Ann Arbor and its environs can accommodate growth without sprawl. And finally, I believe we can do this without cannibalizing our quality of life. Small town look and feel, big city vitality, life of the mind, and entrepreneurship. We can accommodate growth without abandoning our niche, small town feel, big city vitality, in 4 ways. 1, we can accommodate new downtown apartment construction that is more or less in scale with our niche. 331 East Liberty, next door to Seva, is one example. Sloan Plaza is perhaps the outer limits of our niche. 2, revitalizing near downtown student ghettos for downtown workers and families by encouraging the university to locate more student housing on North Campus, near many classes and connected to Central Campus by existing buses. 3, in the manner of European, especially German cities, we can build high-rises inside the outer edge of our city borders and preserve our historic core. Locations near Maple Village, Briarwood, and Arborland malls would be near the transit nodes of freeway on-ramps and could be connected to downtown and the medical center by 24-hour electric buses. This preserves our historic core, as in Europe. 4, Ann Arbor cannot long remain an isolated water lily of prosperity floating in a cesspool of economic decline. Well, more later. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this is really impromptu, but I do want to complain about the 601 South Forest project and the various others going around town. I would like to say one thing. Do I have to identify myself or something like that?
If you'd like it to be part of the record.
My name is Bill Higgins. I live in Ann Arbor for 40 years. I just feel a sense of betrayal to find out 5 years after the fact that the height limit on buildings was done away with for some reason. I fail to understand. And I would like also, reading some of the explanations for why we need all this housing by the developers and things like this. I find the arguments to be highly dubious. I'm a cab driver. I take some of these students around at night, especially the rich New Yorkers, and I know about how much the rents are, and I think that's the only reason why they're building all these things. Is one kid talks about his share of the rent is $800, and I mean, if he's got a 3-bedroom, God only knows, that's huge. And I would ask council to take many grains of salt when the developers talk about what a great bunch of guys they are relieving, the euphemism, relieving pressure on the neighborhood or something like that. And I would say, and with the projects on North Campus and everything going on around on the project on Eastview and the project on South Forest, and the projects out on the west side of town, I said, is the U of M enrollment doubling or something? I mean, where is the need for all this? You know what I'm saying? So I want to point that out. And what else? And where is the parking going to go? I mean, I'm a cab driver. I'm concerned about traffic and stuff like that. And I don't know where the cars are going, where the people, and the parking for that sort of thing. I can't imagine it. I mean, it's going to be a nightmare. So there you have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to address council under public commentary, general time? And we are fortunate to not have a need for a closed session tonight. Someone please move to adjournment. Moved by Councilmember Rapundelow, seconded by all. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.